This is the ExtraTime.com Monday podcast. I'm Oisin Langan. My apologies that we're out a little bit later this week. It's Valentine's Day as I speak to you, and I've spent Valentine's Day so far with Dave Donnelly, Tom O'Connor and Sean Prunty. Sean will join us a little bit later on to talk about what his relationship with football is like now, the glory days of Longford, and of course working under Stephen Kenny. You will probably remember Sean. He was an excellent player for Longford, had great days with them, played for Drogheda as well, but had to retire early due to a health issue. Now, again, if you're a football fan and you follow the league, you've probably heard Sean's story. So we don't go too much into that part of it. We go fairly deep into the rest of it though. And it was an enjoyable chat with Sean. I spent some time with him earlier today and I really enjoyed his company. And I think you'll enjoy his company as well. Tom O'Connor will join us with his usual roundup of the Irish in the UK and abroad. And Dave Donnelly of ExtraTime.com and a few other publications will talk to us about the upcoming SSE Electricity League season. We talk about who'll win the title, who'll be in contention for Europe, who'll be relegated, who'll be promoted. He'll also chat about Vera Pauw's Republic of Ireland team in the Pinatar Cup this week. Before we get into it, a little bit of news. This is the last Extra Time podcast in its current format. I want to thank you for listening. I'm very grateful to those who clicked on the links and downloaded us and listened to us the various way that you listen to podcasts. I want to thank those who contributed to the show as well, because they all gave their time for absolutely nothing. And I'm really grateful to anyone who gave us time. And that includes you, and that includes our guests, because time is a very, very valuable commodity. A special thanks to my partner and girlfriend, Aoife, who's a driving force of this podcast and who never grumbles when I disappear off to edit the podcast or record interviews, and it takes a chunk of time. And of course, she understands that because she's a sports broadcaster too and a regular contributor to ExtraTime.com. Also, a big word of thanks to Gareth Penrose, the creator of ExtraTime.com. I don't think people realise the work he puts into it, but it's a great resource for Irish football fans. And Extra Time has launched so many careers. And there are so many writers out there who owe a debt of gratitude to Gareth for his encouragement and the fact that he gave people a platform. He gave me a platform for this podcast, and I'm forever grateful to him. And I just want to say thanks to Gareth. And Gareth doesn't want praise. He doesn't run Extra Time as a vanity project. It's the opposite of that to Gareth. And I think we need more people like Gareth in the world. So Gareth, thank you very much. I know you don't want attention, but tough luck. You're getting it here because you deserve it. And you deserve a Buddha boss. And before we get to Dave Donnelly and Sean and Tom, I want to say congratulations to Kilcoo and to Ballygunner for winning the AIB All-Ireland club titles in football and hurling. Dramatic games. And we won't go too much into it because we're late coming out and you know the story already and you've seen the analysis and all that. We won't get into the Ireland-France game either because, well, again, that's wall to wall. I think they were right, by the way, to go for the points in the end rather than kicking to the corner and going for the try, but that's by the by. Stephen O'Keefe, I want to talk about something that Stephen O'Keefe, the Ballygunner goalkeeper, said to me before the game, because it's relevant not just to hurling, it's relevant to football, Gaelic football, rowing, canoeing, basketball, anything you have a club in. He said clubs are not just about the top tier. Clubs are not just about the top team winning trophies. And that's great, and we all enjoy those days and whatever, and we hope our club does that in whatever sport we follow. But clubs are about so much more than that. There's a whole depth to them. They're about community, they're about relationships, they're about participation, and all the good stuff that a club does doesn't just stop if a team wins or loses a final. And I know that's the case with Ballygunner, I know that's the case with Ballyhale Shamrocks, I know that's the case with Kilcoo. I especially know that's the case with Kilmacud Crokes because I'm a paid up member of Crokes. But it's the same with every club in any sport. And I thought before a final, and keep in mind Stephen has spent his life trying to win in All-Ireland and hasn't, well, up until a couple of days ago, hadn't done it. Before a final, he was thinking of that. And he said the credits don't roll after the game, and that's that, regardless of what the result is. He said all of that stuff still goes on whether we win or lose. And I thought it was a very, very relevant and valid statement. And I just wanted to share it with you. Right, coming up, Tom O'Connor and Sean Prunty. But before that, Dave Donnelly of ExtraTime.com and DublinLive. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm very good. Before we talk about the return of the SSE Electricity League next weekend, of course, we've had the first match of the domestic season, Pats against Rovers last week in the President's Cup final, a game you can watch back in full on LOI TV. And it wasn't a bad game either, considering the conditions. Let's talk about the Republic of Ireland, because they're playing in the Pinatar tournament this week. It's not important in a sense of Ireland don't need to get wins there. It would be nice to win it, but what Vera Pauw has said is that the overall aim is about development.
Yeah, I think that's it. I have to make a confession. I've been cheating on the podcast recently. I've been on myself and a previous extra time correspondent, Turla Kelly. We've been doing a Back to Jack podcast, which basically goes back in the Jack Charlton era and very early in Jack's era. They won the Reykjavik Cup in Iceland, and that was a precursor, I suppose, to the 1988 Euros qualification. And I think I think this is a free hit for Vera Pauw's team. It's very much a similar case. Like, it'd be nice to win a tournament, but there's no expectation, or there's no they don't need to win the tournament by any chance. It's not really an organised tournament. But if they can go out there and they can get 3 games against high quality teams, if they can maybe, get a couple of wins there as well and just finish well in that tournament, it'll be brilliant for them going into that Sweden game in April, because that's really the big one in the group. And as we've seen from the FAI's, what would you call it? I'm lost for words here, but the platform for the next 3 to 5 years that they've launched, the goal is to get an Irish team into either the Euros or the World Cup every 2 years. And if we can even get a result against Sweden and set ourselves up in a situation where we have a realistic chance of qualifying for the European Championships next year, that would be absolutely brilliant. And I think this tournament against high quality or similar quality teams will be really, really good.
Are we going to set up in these games like we would against Sweden, do you think?
Exactly the same, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Vera has basically set her stall out in a 3-5-2. That is a very adaptable formation. You'll see in the Men's League of Ireland, you'll see that the Shamrock Rovers play that formation, and it's a very sort of what would you say? It's very adaptable. So it can be an attacking formation, but it can change to a defensive formation very quickly, and that's why so many teams are looking at it. Stephen Kenny plays it for the Ireland men's team. Thomas Tuchel plays it for Chelsea as well. It's a formation that's very adaptable, depending on the circumstances. So I very much feel that they will continue with that in the future. I think in the Slovakia game, when it wasn't quite working in the first half, and we went to goal down, what you saw was that basically the 2 wing backs, Anya Gorman and Kate McCabe, very quickly, without even changing the formation, they were able to go into a more attacking role very quickly. And I think that's the major benefit of the formation, and I think that's the reason why Vera is so locked into it, because it can basically get the best out of our players.
Is she too locked into it, Dave? Is that a danger?
I don't think she's too locked into it. You have to remember that she's from the Netherlands, and the major ideology in Netherlands football for the last probably 40 years, coming down from Johan Cruyff, is the 4-3-3 formation, which is it's quite adaptable as well, but that back four is quite rigid. What the 3-5-2 gives you is the ability to basically drop into a back four when you need to and have a player step forward, but you can also keep that 3 and have it in a very
I get what you're saying. Basically, you can get locked into a formation, but so long as you can vary it and make it fluid, like Sun Tzu in The Art of War, and I'm not quoting exactly here, has basically said that a good general has a formation, but that formation is fluid and can move and adapt.
Exactly. The particular coaches, particularly modern coaches, are very... They quite like the 3-5-2 formation or the 3-4-3 or whatever you call it, because it's quite... You can change it very quickly.
Okay, so you're saying 3-5-2, but it can easily turn into 4-3-3, 5-4-1, whatever you need it to turn into during
Yeah,
a game.
exactly.
Okay.
Vera, Vera, even in the Sweden game, called it a 5-4-1. But anyone who was watching the game from a high position, you could see that the formation was changing the entire game.
The 5-4-1 reminds me of the early days of Terry Venables, the Christmas tree formation, as it was known. And he was on one of those Saturday morning kids TV shows. I think it was Alive and Kicking. Was that the one on BBC? There was another one on ITV.
Live and Kicking, presented by Andy. What's his second name?
The guy who sounded American, but he was actually born in Scotland, and now he sounds Scottish again. No, Andy Peters. And the guy I'm thinking of there is John Barrowman, I think.
John Barrowman.
John Barrowman, yeah, star of musicals.
We both dated ourselves immensely.
We really have. But anyway, the point I was going to make is the reason I always refer to the 4-5-1 as the Christmas tree is, first of all, it looks like it, but second of all, I have a vague memory of Terry Venables being on, and kids were allowed to phone him up and ask various questions. And, they were like simple questions like, what's it like to be a footballer? Or do you like football managing? But there was one kid who rang up and said, why are you sticking with the 4-5-1 formation when it clearly isn't working and we're not getting down the wings and attacking opposition? And you could hear his dad feeding him the line in the background.
And Venables was like, you're a mug.
Yeah, exactly. And as we're talking about Terry Venables, please do check out the après match. You're on Sky Sports, Terry Venables sketch. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. Dave, the SSE Electricity League is back at the weekend. There's games on Friday night. There's games on Saturday night. The Women's League returns. Is it the week after or 2 weeks' time? I can't remember which. Okay, I didn't have the fixtures in front of me there. First of all, how excited are you that the league is back?
I'm very excited. I actually, for the first year, probably ever, I haven't been to any pre-season friendlies. So the President's Cup game on Friday was my first game of the season. Okay. Purely due to...
That's a pity, because I was going to ask you how Trialist A got on in the friendlies.
No, I wasn't able to make it down purely just because I'm people I'm in contact with. I just need to make sure I limit my contacts. Yeah. So, I loved being back in the stadiums on Friday. I loved the fact that I was absolutely freezing. I love the fact that I forgot to bring any gloves. And I love the fact that I was standing around for an hour afterwards waiting to talk to people, and was also very cold and could barely hold my phone while I was doing interviews. It was all just a really lovely experience.
What do you most love about going to games?
I just think I just love being there. I mean, there was nearly 5,500 people in Tallaght on Friday night for the President's Cup. Record attendance for the President's Cup, but it just shows how much people want to actually go out and be at the games. It's not a competition. It's not a real competition. It's an exhibition game. It's it's a derby, but it's not the biggest game. Both teams were preparing.
It's a good starter, isn't it? It's a good way to kind of get your appetite whetting for the league, and it's a good signal that the league is back. I think even people who don't follow it day to day, the league that is, realize, oh yeah, something's happening when they hear about the President's Cup. I think coming into this year's season. Coming into this year's league, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there probably is a bit more of a buzz because it didn't seem to stop from the cup final to now. It's like we've had no real off season, and there's a momentum coming in that maybe used to be there for all sorts of reasons. You've got Pats winning the cup. You've got everything that happened after that with Stephen O'Donnell going to Dundalk. You've got the signings made by Derry. You've got the signings made by Dundalk. You've got people talking about Bowes and what are they going to do, and a lot of the big signings. I'm talking about Tierney going off to Scotland. I'm talking about various things. There's just a lot of excitement around. And am I right in saying that it's an excitement that we haven't really experienced before?
I think what's happening is that we're seeing the effects of the last 2 years of basically when we didn't have the last 2 years. We've not had a proper kind of a cycle of off-season, season. It's kind of been very much off season the whole time. And we're seeing the effects of all the work that clubs have done over that time to keep people engaged when they weren't able to go to games. Now we've had this 3 or 4 month off season, but all the work that these clubs have done, the likes of Shells and Finn Harps and Wexford and all these clubs, all the work that they've done over that time to keep people engaged over a period of a year and a half, it's reaping benefits now that there's only a short off season. And
they're also after prepping themselves, and now like the stuff that they had to do to keep people in contact with the club because people couldn't contact the club themselves, as in go to matches. That stuff isn't going to just go away. They're actually going to keep doing that and build on it. And there's a tangible benefit. And like there was a lot of invention through necessity, and now we're going to benefit from that.
Exactly. They've never been reliant on, say, like the Premier League product where you have the TV games every 7 days or every 4 days or whatever, and the entire weekend experience. That's never been the League of Ireland's thing. So they were forced to innovate in the COVID period. They were forced to find ways to keep people engaged, and they're really seeing the benefits of it now. And you can see it even like, the likes of Shamrock Rovers and Shelbourne have record season ticket allocations this year, and that's purely because they've done so much work over the last 2 years to really keep people on the ball and build their build the support over that time.
Yep, of course. I mentioned Tierney going to Scotland. I should probably have mentioned Joe Kenny's move. That was absolutely huge for Sligo, and fair play to Sligo for saying, well, actually, we've raised a good bit of money in transfers and we're going to put that money into the facilities in the club, which is great to hear. Also as well, I know he hasn't played for the Cork City FC senior / top team, but Cathal Heffernan being signed by AC Milan, a Banqua going to Udinese, but he'll still be playing at St. Pat's for a while, which is really good. I mean, that kid just looked to the manner born when he came on in the cup final. I don't think people get how big a deal it was and how amazing it was that he played so well when he came in the cup final. There's just so much good stuff happening.
Yeah, it's purely the underage leagues, and it's purely there's a massive amount of work being done by the schoolboy clubs, not the League of Ireland clubs, the literal schoolboy clubs like the likes of Cherry Orchard and St. Kevin's Boys, and even Moyne Rangers, or all over the country. There's a huge Ringmatton Rangers again. There's a huge amount of work being done across the board, and it's feeding into the League of Ireland system. And there's better coaches now at the League of Ireland level that can lift those players up. I see even on Monday, Shane Keegan has gone into to Treaty United as their academy head or lead of youth development. So there's a huge amount of work going in. There's a huge amount of investment going in just to the I hate the word production, because it sounds like it's an industry, but there's a huge amount of work going into the, I suppose, helping children and teenagers and young adults to realize their dreams. And it's an amazing thing, and it's going really well. And as you can see with, even going back 2 years, Gavin Bazunu, James Abankwa now, both gone for 500,000. Liam Scales doing well in Celtic, and now he scored on Sunday. Went over 500,000 as well. Like it's a huge benefit, not just for those players, but also that money is being put back in to help them develop the next generation. And I think that's also the best thing.
And also from the marketing point of view, and as you're aware, I've done a lot of work in that field as well. It sends a message to the non-believers, as you should call them, or people who don't really follow the league, that there's quality, and there must be quality, because AC Milan and Udinese and Celtic don't come looking for bad players. They can look anywhere in the world, but they came here. I appreciate with Celtic, there's probably now maybe limitations on what they can bring in and people from where and whatever regards Brexit, but still to bring in.
Yeah, and I think from your own marketing background, you'll know as well. If you undersell something, if you have too low a price for what you're selling, I know we're talking about human beings here, so I'm saying the price you're putting on their talent. If you place that too low, it's undervalued. So those people, when they go over to other clubs, if you've come in for 10 grand or whatever, the club's not going to put a huge amount of investment in you. If you come in for $500,000 or $1 million, that club is going to say, look, we spent a lot of money on you. We're going to have to really work on you.
Yeah, they won't write you off
more.
as easily. If they've only spent 10 grand on you, then they'll go, well, sure, it was only a cheeky 10 grand anyway. Whereas if they spend, as you've said, we are talking about human beings, but this is just the way football works. It's a beautiful game. It's a horrible business. It's just the way it works that they'll put a bit more effort into making sure what they spend more money on will be used. Look, I'm conscious we haven't actually talked about the on-field product that's restarting next week.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that. That's not important.
No. But look, what are you expecting from the league this year? As in, who do you think will be challenging? You did write about this in your predictions for the season. I'm not going to lie, Dave. I've had a busy couple of days. Haven't read it yet, so this will be the first time I'll hear it.
I've made my predictions. I haven't published them yet, so that's probably why you haven't seen it, and also because you don't care. I think it's going to be an interesting season. I think Shamrock Rovers will run away with the league. You probably won't be surprised by that.
Run away with it.
Yeah, they have the most settled squad. They've only brought in 2 players. They've lost 3, so that's the most settled squad. And if you look around the football worldwide, the most settled squad tends to be the best squad. So the fact that they've had to make so few changes, I think that is going to really stand to them.
What about Derry? They've brought in serious quality and guys who know the league as well, players who can deliver in this league. That has to count for something.
But their starting lineup could have 7 or 8 players that weren't there last year, and that's the worry that I have.
But they have played together, and they know the manager, and he knows them as well. So they're unsettled in a sense that they might not have played together for Derry an awful lot, but they have played together in the past an awful lot, and they have played under the manager. Granted, he wasn't the manager at where they played under him, but you know the point I'm making.
Yeah, I suppose there's 4 have come in from Dundalk, and there's a couple from Bray and a couple from elsewhere. So it's kind of a diverse incoming of players, I suppose. But I think Derry. If I'm looking at Derry, they've given those players 3 or 4 year contracts, and I think that's the way Derry are thinking. They're thinking long term. They're thinking, this team will come together over a course of years. I just don't see Derry challenging for the title this year. I could be completely wrong, and if I am wrong, like I always do, because I'm wrong an outstanding amount of the time, I will say that I'm wrong, but I can't see anyone challenging Rovers this year unless Rovers have some sort of collapse.
Okay, who'll be challenging for the European spots then? I assume it's a little mini league, and we call it the top 4 between Derry, Pats, and Sligo potentially. Are you throwing Bowls in there as well?
Yeah, it's funny. I talked to Liam Buckley on last Wednesday at the league launch, and I think by the end of it, he'd mentioned 9 teams challenging for Europe. Yeah, which kind of sums it up a bit. I think there's going to be an awful lot of there'll be a bit of upheaval. I think Darragh limped out of the Malone Cup game there on Friday night. I hope it's not a long-term injury for him, but he could be a big loss for Dundalk. I think they, the very same as Dundalk or as Derry, but probably bigger. They brought an awful lot of new players in, and I think they might struggle to integrate all those players, but also it might just work out really well. Pats have brought an awful lot of new players in the President's Cup. They had 6 debutants in the team. James Abankwah was the only member of the back 5 who was at the club last year. So that's an awful lot of new players to integrate as well. Bowls have lost, I think, 5 or 6 starters from the FAI Cup final last year as well. So most teams are bringing an awful lot of new players in. Drogheda as well. Tim Clancy's brought a few of those players up. They've lost a couple more to other teams as well. So I think apart from Rovers, I think every team in the league, purely due to the fact that the league is so competitive and that we're having players picked off by other leagues. All those other teams are just having to integrate an awful lot of new players, and that's going to be difficult for them next season. And that's the one thing that I think would really. I know Rovers weren't great in the President's Cup game the other day, but if they, once they go into the season with that consistency they have, I just think that they will run away with it.
Should I have included Shelbourne in that little mini league that I was talking about? Again,
Shelbourne, 15 new players. The majority of their starting lineup, with the exception of Luke Byrne and maybe Brendan Clark, they're probably going to be 9 new players in that starting lineup. So that's just very difficult to integrate with a new coach in a new league at short notice. So for Shelbourne, my opinion is probably that if they are safe and not in danger of relegation by September, I think they'll be very happy with that. And I think Damien Duff will be very happy with that. I think it'll be the likes of, it'll be Pats, it'll be Derry, it'll be Sligo, and it'll be Bowes and Drogheda who will really be looking for those 3 spots for Europe.
Who gets relegated?
UCD.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Because they possibly will lose their best players in June. I would be surprised if Collie Whelan and Liam Kerrigan do not go in June or July, and they'll just really suffer. It will depend on whether.
Why would they have not gone before now? Is it because they're getting their education there and there's some reason they can't go right now, but they can go in June, or why are they?
They're on scholarships until the end of the school year.
Oh, the academic year. Okay, so they can go then, but they can't go now. I get you. Okay. What about the first division? Who gets
on
promoted?
Professional contracts? So UCD would have to release them, but if another club like a Shamrock Rovers or a Shelbourne, if they offered enough money to release them from that contract, they would go.
Okay, who gets promoted? And you can say Cork City.
I think Waterford will run away with the first division as well. I think it's going to be incredibly competitive for that for those playoff spots. I think any club, really, any of the other 8 clubs could get into those 4 positions, because I just think they're all quite close to each other. The one team that I would say I think will surprise people will be Wexford. I think Wexford will finish in the top 3.
Okay. We might take a more detailed look at the Women's League, because that doesn't start next weekend, unlike the First Division and the Premier Division. We might take a more detailed look at that next week or beyond. But there is talk of a second tier coming into that either next year or the year after, in the development plan that was released. Is that a good thing? Can you see that helping?
Yeah, I think it's part of a long term. It's for once with the FAI, it's not something that they've just sprung on people. It's part of a long term thing. They have spent the last couple of years trying to basically get every League of Ireland men's club to have a women's club as well.
Yeah.
So if there's 19 men's teams and they're looking to bring more in, the idea would be that there will be at least 19, 20 plus women's teams as well eventually. I know, for instance, Dundalk are entering the under-17s league this year. Shamrock Rovers for the last couple of years have been in the underage leagues. Yeah. So there is a plan with all of these clubs to eventually bring in a senior women's team. So I do think that it might not be next year, but in the next 2 to 3, 4 years, I do think that there will be a number of senior teams to justify 2 levels.
Okay.
So I think that will happen. It might not be as quick as they have set out in the prospectus, but I do think that will happen fairly quickly.
Okay. Just before I let you go, if we're having a conversation at the end of the league season, what to you will have represented a good season? What are you hoping for?
I think attendance is up. I think I suppose the main thing that the top clubs are looking for is to progress in Europe. I think if we have, last season was our best ever season in Europe, collectively as a group. If next year can even match that or go better than that, that would be amazing. And in terms of, I suppose, in terms of eyes on the league, I think TJ Carr have announced 9 games for this season. If they go above nine games, I think that would be amazing as well. And I think that would provide a huge platform for the National League to grow. And I think that will happen. I think TJ Carr will broadcast more than 9 WNL games next year.
Dave, thank you very much. This is the extratime.com Monday podcast, the last edition of the podcast as it is. Sean Prunty, you're not killing off the podcast. I want to make that very, very clear. It just is a coincidence that we actually had you booked before the news came through that things were going to have to change. How are you?
I'm keeping great. Yeah, keeping really well. Staying active, kept busy with work, and looking forward to the season kicking off. So I think it's going to be an exciting season within the League of Ireland.
I always think with former players, there's no middle ground. They either stay very healthy and look like they could still walk back onto a football pitch and play away, or they go a different route. You've gone the healthy route. Look, I appreciate there's probably very serious reasons for that, but you look like a guy who's doing a lot of exercise, eating the right things and still living like an athlete.
Yeah, I think that's just the mindset that I grew up when I was playing football. It was the league was never like overly professional. I know towards the end of my career, there were a couple of professional teams, but I think there's ability to get you so far, but outside of that, you have to look after yourself. And that comes down, a lot of that comes down to obviously nutrition and how you recover after games. And it was an area that I was always interested in. So yeah, since retiring, I'm still keeping very active, and that's a combination of mountain running, cycling, which is a new thing now because we're a couple of us, or 4 of us from work, are participating in a race from Mizenhead to Mallinhead in June. And kept really busy with everything really, and it's just good for the mind. I found exercise and keeping active, particularly during the lockdowns, was very important for myself.
We don't need to go back into the detail of why you retired. I think you've told that story many times. Yeah. But how important is it for you that you're able to do exercise? Because I imagine when you got that news at first, maybe you thought, I might have to just sit and not push myself here because that could lead to trouble. But obviously you're able to manage it and you're able to have an enjoyable and active life. Yeah.
So at the time, I probably pushed it a little bit harder than I thought or that I should have when I got the news. But I was going down to the local GAA pitch in Ballinolea, where my family lived, where I lived. And it was they were great. They allowed me to use the indoor, the gym that they have there. They were allowing me to, train around the pitch. And that was just on the hope that, the results would come back saying they'd made an error, but I was obviously still fit. So yeah, but exercise was massive for me to get some headspace, to go out and have a clear head for if I was going up the mountains or whatever it was. So it was huge for me to gather my thoughts and I suppose just to have a healthy mind. I find when I do exercise, I'm generally a better person. I'm not as agitated, and I can think an awful lot clearer as well. So it was important to have that outlet when I retired.
Yeah, and you seem to be enjoying doing different things. When people sometimes walk away from football and they can't play it anymore, they find it hard to find something. And you know what I mean when I say something, just something to fill in that gap, whereas you seem to have found it on the bike and just general fitness.
Yeah, I read a book recently, I think it was called Retired, and it was talking about footballers who, when they do retire, there's so many of them that become depressed, so many relationships break down. They don't have a fallback position. It was solely focusing on football. But when I was playing football, I lived it, and that was it. Everything else took a back seat. But thankfully, when I retired, I got to realise that there's more important things outside of more important things in life outside of football, and not just focusing on it, but different sports, things that I wouldn't be overly strong with, and in cycling, for example. But I have to work hard in order to achieve a decent level. So it has been great to be open-minded with these things and not just solely focus on football. And I think that's really important, because when players retire, I remember when sort of the league in 2008, when sort of the league was going through quite a turbulent time, and the money wasn't there. There was lads who were leaving, or who like their career was based on football, and that was their income. And when that ends, and you're all of a sudden told, right, this is your wages are being cut. You have a family to provide for, you've got bills to pay, and it's important to have that structure outside of football. And I think that's definitely changing now. Young guys coming through, young players coming through, see the benefit of having an education and educating themselves, outside of football. And that's going to be really, really important for players, because it is a short career. If you get to play until 34, 35, and hopefully you don't get injured, having something outside of football is obviously very important.
Are you able to go to games now? Are you able to watch games? Because I read an article a couple of years ago where you said you went to a game and you had to leave at halftime. Where is that now?
I'm probably not as bad. I'd be bringing the young lad across to games now, but it was very difficult. And I've only been to a handful of games. I generally follow it online, and and watch it on TV. But I do miss the atmosphere of the League of Ireland. I think it's in a more positive position or place now compared to where it was a number of years ago, and that's down to you can see what clubs are doing online and social media, how they're generating, trying to get more families involved in football. And that's a huge thing. But for me, I definitely found it very difficult to go back to games. But, I think that's changed now, and I will be roping the kids to come in and join me, because I'm living in Blanchardstown, stone's throw away from plenty of pitches around here.
You make it sound like they're going to give you a choice. If the kids want to go, you're going, and that's that, isn't it? And it's probably a good thing. And you're coaching away. Go on. Yeah, you're coaching away. You're working with Colin Hawkins, I believe.
Yeah, so Hawks, I would have played against Hawks plenty of times when he was involved, when he was playing with Shells and when he was with Bows, and really good player, very tough, but excellent footballer. And my young lad, my eldest, Evan, who's 7, he'd only sort of 6 or 7 months ago decided that he wanted to play football. I never pushed him into playing it. My dad never done the same to me. It was just this natural growth towards it. So he wanted to go and play. And I reached out to St. Moctus and went up and met Hawks up there. And I knew it was only going to be a matter of time before he'd put the arm around the shoulder and say, "Come here, look, we're short of coaches. Would you mind jumping in?" And that's pretty much what happened.
Subconsciously, you must have known, though, that was the case. That was your subconscious pushing you back into football, I think, was it?
Exactly, yeah. So, and I have to say, they've got a fantastic setup at St. Moctus. It's a really well-run academy. And it's great to see so many kids involved and playing football. And, it's got really good coaches there as well. So, it's all about enjoyment at that age, and for kids to come out. I know everyone talks, so it's not about the winning. It's just that they need to, get game time. They need to feel confident and happy when they're playing football, and generally that's what's happening. We've got training now this evening, and Wednesday we play games on Saturday. But it's just great that the kids are active and out and about. And
you get enjoyment out of their enjoyment, I guess.
I do, yeah. And just seeing my own little lad, the fact that he enjoys it, that he's making friends, social aspect as well. He goes up there and he's absolutely delighted to jump in training sessions. And it's just to get them out and about. Kids these days are so, I suppose, fixated on not social media, but even gaming, and to get them out. And it's football, and the social aspect of it is really important, particularly in team sports.
And I guess it's nice as well to be around football and not be obsessed with formations and false nines and whatever. The kids they don't care about positions. They just want to play.
They just want to play. They just want to score goals. And that's what it's all about for them. And when they come back every single session, you're doing something right. So as I said, we're lucky that we've got a really good setup there with at St. Moctus. We've got good coaches. and the kids thoroughly enjoy it, and it's all about fun for them, and it's making like they learn something, but it's fun along the way, and you just want them to go out and play it like it's street football. You don't put any emphasis on things, you just try to encourage them as much as possible and do the right things, obviously, and but there's times where you're biting your lip, thinking, oh, come on, you can do better with this, but that's just down to the kids have potential, and you just want to see them do it right, but that all comes over time.
Yeah, you mentioned there that you're following the League of Ireland. Is the League of Ireland a better environment now for players? And what I mean there is, I think now, even if I say to a player, listen, I can give you a tenner a week, generally the clubs tend to budget a bit better now. I think they know there's no point in gambling. 2, they can say to that player, well, we can give you this, but look, if you play well here, the incentive is there for you to move either somewhere else in the league or to go straight over to England. 3, maybe they're growing up a bit. They can stay at home and they can get a bit of education and just live a bit of life. And then when they're ready for it, a la Kevin Doyle, go over to England and have that life knowledge. That's kind of more what the league is about now, I think, than it used to be. And it used to be a case of there was maybe there's a bit more positivity around the league as well, in the sense that people now, they like I used to say to people, oh, I'm going to a League of Ireland match, then they'd nearly go, oh, that. Whereas now there's none of that. They actually say, oh, that's interesting. It seems to be a good place to be now.
Yeah, it is, because I think there's been so much positive work done with clubs. Like you look at, say, Sligo Rovers, like last week I was reading a really good article on them and how they're looking to invest their money into an academy, and what they've done, what Shamrock Rovers have done, Bows, who I feel that they lose some quality players literally every season, but they managed to bring young lads through again and given them, and like there's a host of clubs in that situation where it's a community thing, and I definitely think it's in a positive place now. But that's down to the work of what the people within the club is doing, the social media. You can see it. It's really getting people involved in it, and clubs are thinking outside the box as well. You look at what Bows have done with the jerseys over the last couple of years, and that's kind of garnered a reputation then worldwide, because that can go viral, and people are then, okay, who are this club? And so there's the people that you have to think outside the box, and that thankfully that's what they've done. I think at Longford Town, they've hired Dave Donnelly down there, who's looking after their social media, and I think he's full time down there, which is great, because a club like Longford Town needs sort of regular updates, and they need to feel that, like, you need to feel sort of that you're a part of the club, and that's what I think is really good at the moment, what a lot of clubs are doing, and people within clubs. It is very positive, like what Shamrock Rovers have done with their academy, and encouraging young lads to get their education as well is vitally important.
You have to meet people halfway, don't you? You can't just expect them to come to games. And you mentioned it there, the social media thing. You're reaching out to people who maybe wouldn't have been reached out to before, or wouldn't have been reached before. That's very important. You played at Longford. I think is it fair to say that's where you had your best days as a footballer?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I've said it constantly. Like I had a pretty short career within the League of Ireland, but thankfully, like I was there for 6-7 seasons, and we were in 6 cup finals. We were lucky enough to do back-to-back FAI Cups as well. So it was a short career, but it was, like, I suppose it was a successful one. And it was great that, like, I was from Longford, I'm living in Longford, my family are down there. So, even every so often when I got back down to see them, it's just great to speak to fans again, because we get to relive those days that were quite successful.
They must have felt like great days when you were there, because you were successful and you had crowds. But now when you look back on them, do you realise exactly how special they were, and how what ye did as a club was pretty phenomenal?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Like, it started with Stephen Kenny, and, because it was Stephen that signed me at Longford Town. And at the first year I was there, they got into the FAI Cup final against Bows, and Bows beat us 1-0. And then Martin Lawler was there for a short period of time. Then Alan Matthews came in with Aaron Callahan, and like the two of them worked really well together. Like the intensity of the training just totally changed. Aaron was an excellent coach. Alan was a very good manager. and he just got everything out of the players. You know, it was a great time to be part of the club. We were getting fans coming from Cavan, we were getting fans coming from, you know, out as far as Galway, the Galway border as well. And, you know, we were getting decent crowds at the game. And then I think we played Bows in a League Cup final out at home at Flanker, which, you know, is now Bishopsgate. But we had like maybe 4,000 or 5,000 possibly at the game, and it was just a great atmosphere. It was a good time to be playing at Longford Town. Young players come out, like there was lads like that had come back from England, like Shane Barrett, Graham Gartland, Stephen Paisley, Sean Dillon. And they all just came to Longford Town. So we had a really good, solid squad of players who, you know, we never challenged for the league. It would have been nice to, but that particular time, Shells were very dominant. Bows were very dominant as well. So it was a very good league. It was a very tough league, but you had a very good quality of players as well. Cork City as well were very successful.
How much of that magic was about Stephen Kenny? And how much of it was about the town and the county getting behind the club in a way I don't think they had ever done before? Now, I could be wrong there, but in my time following and watching League of Ireland, I had never seen that kind of support for Longford. I don't think I've seen it since. And you like I'm as I speak to you, I'm in Dundalk, and when I walk around Dundalk ahead of a big game, it's like walking around a county with a strong hurling team or Gaelic football team in an All-Ireland final. It's that kind of atmosphere, and Longford had that in those good days. Yeah,
but that was down to Stephen Kenny and the players that we had there. So Stephen, what really got behind, he gave local lads a chance. Even before I arrived at Longford Town, he was giving local guys a chance, and that's all. What, like, people at Longford, they want to see like local players coming through and hopefully make it. So that was in itself was bringing more people into the ground. Then he was like happy to mingle with fans after the game. You know, he was encouraging players to, you know, go back to a sponsored pub and mingle with the fans. And that's what it was, is that you got to know the fans, they got to know you, and they would come out to the games. And, you know, it was Longford would have been definitely a GAA county, but, you know, you'd have fans who would be primarily GAA supporters coming out to support Longford Town. And, you know, that even showed, like, we had huge crowds go up to the cup finals over the successful years that we were there. And it was great. But a lot of it was down to Stephen. I suppose he had a solid foundation there. And then when Alan and Aaron came in and put their spin on things, they brought in really good players. They had a system that everyone just knew their jobs. And we were thankfully successful over a short period of time.
I remember actually coming up to the first cup final you played against Bows. There was a media day, and Longford brought a load of players, and it was the first time I ever met Stephen Kenny. And he came up to me and he said, "Will you do me a favour?" And Stephen has this way of you wanting to do something for him. I think he has a way of getting people on side.
He does.
And he said, that's a knowing smile as I look at you.
It is.
He said to me, "There's two lads over there." He said that they wouldn't play a whole pile. He said, "But no one has interviewed them yet." He said, "Will you go over and interview them?" And obviously, looking back, I now know he wanted them to feel included, important, and I genuinely just thought, well, you know what, it's rude to leave these lads out. But I thought that was, and looking back on that, I was like, okay, I now understand how Stephen Kenny has got as far as he has. First of all, he's a very good tactical mind, and he has all those traits, but he also knows how to deal with people and knows how to build a community. He did it in Longford, he's done it in Dundalk, and now he's actually, funnily enough, doing it in the Republic of Ireland.
You've hit the nail on the head. And when he got the job at with the Republic of Ireland, like, I was always asked, like, do I think he'd do a good job? And I always said, yeah, he will, but he needs to be given time. And there were so many issues, like, things went against him over such a short period of time that you're like, oh God, how can anyone have this amount of bad luck? But you can see, once he gets the players in, and you can tell by the interviews that they're happy to play for him. And he's brought them in. He's got his own way of obviously doing things, but like, he's given young lads a chance, which is, if Stephen hadn't have been or wasn't the Irish manager, a lot of these guys probably wouldn't have been given the opportunity to play with for Ireland, and we would have just gone, oh yeah, probably, just a very good player, but was never an international. Stephen has made these guys like nearly a household name at this stage. And he done that. Any team that he went to, whether it be Longford Town, he brought in Stewie Bourne, Wes Bourne, Paul McNally, Vinnie Peart, Paul Peart, Stephen O'Brien, like really good players. Then even at he went to obviously Dundalk. He had a very successful time there. Lads who would have been, very good players. He made them even better. Chris Shields, you always think of like one of the best players. I never played against him, but one of the best players within the league. And I think, Stephen made him a really top quality player. And he done that with any team he was at. Obviously, he had it didn't work out for him at Shamrock Rovers. But, these things happen. These things happen in football. But he is the type of guy that players want to play for, because he's that type of man-manager sort. Not saying he's a Jurgen Klopp type manager, but he's that one that would come around to you and give you a hug after a game. And that's why you see players wanting to play for him. If it was like, a manager that just comes on, shake your hand and off you go. But Stephen, he really encourages, sort of good man management with players, because he understands that players get down. We never meant to go out and play bad, but sometimes you just need a hand around the shoulder, to give you that bit of confidence. And he definitely gave me that at Longford Town, and he wasn't afraid to make tough decisions either. You see it within the Irish squad. People are saying, why isn't Robbie Keane involved? Stephen just wants his own spin of things, and you have to admire him for that. Like he's there to, I suppose, put a solid foundation for Irish football, which has been neglected over the last number of years. And if there's a pathway there for lads within the League of Ireland to go on and play within the Irish setup, get a senior cap and whatever it might be, absolutely fantastic. It benefits the country, it benefits the league as well. And you'll see that when kind of players come in, you'll always see on social media, such and such played with Derry City, played with Shamrock Rovers, and you see the people saying the affiliation with the League of Ireland. I think that's important that we continue to do that, and I think more and more players from the league will get opportunities under Stephen Kenny.
Does it make you even more proud, maybe in a retrospective sense, to have been part of the League of Ireland and part of some great days in the League of Ireland when you see that happening now?
Yeah, definitely. Like Stephen told me, Stephen only signed me on a recommendation of Brian Kerr, which I'm even at that I'm sort of happy about, So he would always have gone and looked at players before signing them. But yeah, my time in the League of Ireland, I got to play with really good players under good managers, and played against really good players as well. There was quality in every single team that we played against. And, like Shamrock Rovers, obviously a big name. Like we played against them so many times, and we always seemed to have the upper hand on them. But they had like fantastic players who played across in the UK, played with Ireland, and then even with St. Pat's as well. Like there was quality going through the league, which was fantastic, and I think it's happening again, which is great to see, and it benefits the league. But I think now with Stephen in charge of Ireland, it will benefit the Irish national team.
And I think it's happening in a more sustainable way now, as in the quality in the league, as in clubs aren't gambling finance to get those players in. They're kind of looking, saying, well, this is the quality we can bring in, and they're being realistic. And those players are ambitious because they know if they play well, and I see it in the Irish league as well, I cover an awful lot of that, they know if they play well, there's a bigger move for them. And no club or no set of fans would begrudge a player moving on to what they might perceive to be a bigger move. What about yourself, Sean? What are your own favourite memories? What are your own personal highlights of your time in the league? I suppose specifically at Longford, because that's where you'd have had the most success, but you had some good days outside of that as well.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the time at Longford, and winning the FAI Cups was great. And what I miss about football is I think it's the camaraderie that you'd have with your teammates. It's that sort of bond that you would have with teammates in the changing room, and the bit of crack that you would have with them. And we had some great characters in. I hate using characters because I always think of Brendan Rodgers every time I use that word. But there was great lads within the team, like Desi Baker, Dean Fitzgerald, Paul McNally, Stewie Bourne, like real good players. And I was just lucky to play alongside these guys. Alan Kirby would be my best mate. And, I only got to know Kerbs after we played Waterford in the 2001 sort of FAI Cup semi-final.
Went to a replay, didn't it? Yeah.
I went to a replay, yeah. And then Stephen signed him after that. Kerbs got man of the match in the second game, and I'm convinced they only gave man of the match to butter him up to sign at Longford Town. So that's and I would slag him to that. I'd still slag him about that to this day. But he's I was very lucky to play within the league, and it's a privilege to play within the league. You've got people that just love it, like supporters coming all the time, and there's no. There was never anything malicious, even with fans. There's always a bit of fun with them. It's a good atmosphere. I think it's definitely changing. There's a lot of families now going to the games, and clubs are putting a huge emphasis on that to encourage families to come, because you look at like Jack Bourne you've got Jack Bourne obviously at Shamrock Rovers, Richie Tell, Graham Burke as well. Super players, absolutely super players. But you'll have that now throughout various different teams in the league. I think Derry will be very strong. Dundalk obviously have had their issues over the last couple of seasons, but they still have some excellent players. And I do think Pats will do quite well as well this year. So it's going to be interesting.
It sounds like you're either falling back in love with the league or have never fallen out of love with it. And it sounds like we'll see you regularly at matches.
Yeah, well, I've never fallen out of it. Yeah. Out of love with the league. I think young lads go out, they try their hardest. They're trying to make a career for themselves. It's not easy. When I was playing with Longford Town, you were travelling to Dublin, you were getting home at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night. But it's what you love. If you're asking me to do what I do it now, I've not a chance. I'll be thinking, how did I even do it back then? But lads now have families. They're more commitments, as well. But they just do it. They do it for the love of football as well. And again, you look at, I think there's so much potential within their league for it to grow. Not just the Premier League, but also the first division. Some really good players. And you look at the managers as well. It's not just a merry-go-round of managers where it was years ago. Now, that could be the case over a couple of years, but you've got Stephen Bradley doing great out at Shamrock Rovers. You've got Derry City, I think will be very strong. And Stephen obviously gone up to back to Dundalk, which was quite interesting.
Would you be tempted to go into management in the league yourself now that it's a full-time career, no?
Not a chance. To try and deal with, as much as I admire the guys for everything that they do, to try and manage that, I wouldn't have the head for it. As a coach or nutritionist, absolutely no problem. I think I'd enjoy that side of it, but management, I'm trying to manage 3 kids and at the moment, and even I struggle at that. So trying to manage egos and everything that comes with it, I think I would struggle.
Your own personal career highlight, what was your favourite moment, or what were your favourite couple of moments as a player?
I would say the FAI Cup, winning it the first time was absolutely brilliant. And then scoring what turned out to be the winner in the League Cup final against Bows down in what was known as Flanker Park was great as well, because it was at home. I think my grandmother had just passed a couple of weeks previous that. So, that for me was just scoring at home. And actually somebody had taken the pictures as well. So they caught the whole, the build up to the goal and the celebration. And it was just like seeing like me with my teammates, but then seeing the happiness that it brought the fans as well. You can look back on that, you can relive it, and you can, I do show my kids, if I find YouTube videos, like, God, there's me scoring a goal. I didn't score many of them, but, I do try to make them aware that I played football in the past.
And that motivation of making people happy, that seems to have been a thing for you when you played, and it seems to be have been a thing for this Longford team. And that's not nothing, is it? That's hard to capture, because you've probably seen it, or maybe even been around some teams where guys are there to take their check and that's that. They don't care.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was one of those things we lived in Longford, if we played bad, it felt bad. I remember at the time we played UCD in a cup in the FAI Cup. We drew, they scored in the 92nd minute. There was a replay. And it was I think it was on a Friday or Saturday night. The replay was on the Tuesday, but we didn't go out after. I didn't go out after, because it was so, I was like, I can't go out. We drew a game, we've got a game on Tuesday. But I think it's just one of those things that it's in you to try and perform as best as you possibly can, and to be, everyone say, God, give it all for the jersey. But, I think, outside of that, you're eating right, your nutrition is right, you're looking after yourself, you're training, doing that little bit of extra training, whether it be in the gym or whatever it might be. Because at the end of the day, is that you want to, you want to do, it's a short career. You want to look back and say, I gave it my all and I was a good professional. You've got family there that you want to make sure that they come to support you, that you don't want to be letting them down. And then people are paying money to come and see it as well. So, and that's not just like kind of me just saying that, you're trying to appease the fans. It genuinely, that's the way it was. You'd always try and make sure you give it 100%. Don't get me wrong. I was never some lads are born with just out and out ability. I wasn't. I had ability, but I had to work really hard to get to where I was. But I would always give it like 100% and make sure that, my football was, I knew what I was doing, but outside of that, I could, train well, eat well, and not let a manager down, because it's a tough enough job. Like, the last thing you want is a sort of dressing room revolt, which wouldn't be easy.
Sean, we could talk to you all day, and there are so many things we could talk to you about, but we have to wrap it up. Sean Prunty, formerly of Longford Town, thank you very much for joining us on the extratime.com Monday podcast.
Thanks, Oisin. Appreciate it. Thank you.
What an unbelievably good guy. Sean Prunty speaking to the extratime.com Monday podcast. Before we go, let's find out how the Irish did in the UK and beyond over the weekend with extratime.com's Tom O'Connor.
Hi, Oisin. This weekend we'll start with the Women's Scottish Cup. Celtic beat Rangers 2-1 with Tyler Toland and Izzy Atkinson featuring for Celtic, with Ciara Grant in the Rangers side. For Eileen Gleeson's Glasgow City, Claire Walsh and Claire Shine started in a 6-0 victory against Hamilton Academical, and the draw for the quarter-finals takes place today at midday. In the Men's Scottish Cup, Liam Scales started and scored the opener for Celtic as they hammered Raith Rovers. Raith Rovers had Cork's Ethan Varian among their substitutes, and he's on loan from Stoke City. Conor Ronan, who had been on a goal-scoring streak in the league, recorded an assist for St Mirren as Kelty Hearts were swept aside 4-0, while Jake Carroll played 90 minutes as Motherwell beat Aberdeen 2-1, and the draw for the quarter-finals of the men's competition takes place this evening. Dropping to England, and following Andrew Omobamidele's strike for Norwich in October, Seamus Coleman became the second Irish international defender to score against Leeds this season, as he netted the opening goal for Everton in their 3-0 win at the weekend, while Shane Duffy was part of the Brighton defence, which kept a clean sheet in a 2-0 win over Watford. Brighton loanee Aaron Connolly opened his Middlesbrough account as they hammered Derby County 4-1, while Michael Obafemi netted for the second weekend in a row as Swansea beat Bristol City 3-1. Cyrus Christie providing the assist before finding the net himself, and that's his first Swans goal. Incidentally, in the Bristol City goal, Irishman Max O'Leary had to be substituted in between both goals due to injury. At the other end of the injury scale, West Brom's Dar O'Shea got 5 minutes during the week against Sheffield United, and hopefully will be on the bench tonight as West Brom face Blackburn. And the previously mentioned Omobamidele's injury hasn't cleared up, and he will be out for a little longer, according to his manager. Irish under-21 international Joel Bagan also found the net, his first goal of the season, as Cardiff lost 2-1 to Millwall at the New Den. And staying on the goal trail was a first Portsmouth goal for ex-Millwall striker Aidan O'Brien on his debut, as they beat Doncaster 4-0. Ex-Derry City winger Ronan Curtis grabbed an assist for the goal, which was his 6th assist in the league this season, and Gavin Bazunu recorded his 12th clean sheet of the campaign. In the same division, Will Keane found the net from the penalty spot for his 15th league goal of the season as Wigan beat Charlton 2-1. Warren O'Hora picked up the Man of the Match award as MK Dons drew 0-0 with Ipswich. Conor Coventry, O'Hora and Troy Parrott were all part of the MK Dons side. Coventry after joining recently on loan from West Ham. And Troy Parrott, of course, is on loan from Spurs, and his parent club were defeated by Wolves on Sunday. Ex-Bows defender Matt Doherty on the losing side against his former outfit. However, there was better news for the Tottenham women's side as they won against Birmingham. That was a Blues side with 3 Irish starters. As usual, Lucy Quinn skippered the side, while her namesake Louise and Jamie Finn also started, with Emily Whelan appearing as a late substitute. Brighton women beat Reading 4-1, with Megan Walsh coming out on top in the battle of the Irish goalkeeping teammates. Grace Maloney in the Royals goal. Megan Conley also played in the game. Ruisha Littlejohn was booked for Aston Villa as they won 2-1 versus an Everton side with Courtney Brosnan on the bench. And in the Championship, Megan Campbell, who we saw recently returned to the international fold for the first time since November 2020, she came on as a sub for Liverpool on 58 minutes and grabbed an assist as the Merseysiders won 3-0 against Sunderland. Other Irish players for Liverpool included Leanne Kiernan, who hit the crossbar, while Niamh Fahey also named in Vera Pauw's squad and is looking for cap number 100 during this upcoming international break.
Tom O'Connor of extratime.com, thank you very much. That's it from us. I said my goodbyes at the start of the show, so I don't want to say them again. The reason for the podcast change will hopefully become apparent in the next couple of days, but they are reasons that are positive, and I'm looking forward to the next adventure. And hopefully the podcast will continue in some way, shape or form, and I may well be part of it, but the very best of luck to those who will drive it from here. It's been a great thing to be a part of, and I hope that you have enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed putting it together. That's it from me. As always, you can get us on Twitter at Extra Time News, or you can get me on at Oisin Langan. Until we meet again, and we will meet again, take care. Bye bye.